People who are moving to Montana or people that already live here in Montana don't like a lot of government interference or laws telling them what they can and can't do with their property. In this video, I'm going to talk about some of the common things we see regarding property laws, and at the end, I'm going to show you some things that can happen and some things that have already happened when you don't have any regulations on land. So one of the most common things we run into here are road easements. You may have bought a piece of property and you see this road. Obviously, it's not a very well-traveled road, but there is a road going through your property, and it could very well be accessing another property next door or some farmland, whatever it may be. You want to make sure you know if there's an easement and what that easement entails and who can use it and how often they can use it. And there's all kinds of rules that can cause problems for you if you want your own private piece of property. And once these easements are set up, they're recorded at the courthouse and they do not go away. You can't go down there and say, I want to get rid of this easement. Both you and the person that originally signed it, who it benefits, have to sign off on it. So if the people that are using the easement don't want to get rid of it, then that's too bad. You're not going to be able to get rid of it, and you're just going to have to live with who's using your road. A lot of times you'll also see a septic easement where like a lower property couldn't get approval for a septic, so it's the septic tank or system drain field is on your property, and obviously they're going to need access to it if it ever needs repairs, and you can't clearly dig there and ruin their septic field because it's on your property. It's an easement and it has to stay. Shared wells are also very common around here, and again, there'll be a water line running, into your property or off of your property, but an easement that can't be disturbed or touched because of the agreement that was made when the people decided on a shared well. And the most common is utility easements, and they're in there with, Flathead Electric Co-op or whoever the electric company is. They are always going to have access to those lines that run through your property. So again, you may own this property, but there may be numerous different people that can access your property because of these different types of easements. Over the years, I have had numerous companies reach out to sponsor my videos. None of them have ever offered anything that I would actually use or anything that would benefit my audience. Well, finally, we have a sponsor for our video. Aura is an app that I use and one that can help and protect you in the online world. A couple years ago, I went down to Mexico on vacation and my computer was compromised through the resort's Wi-Fi service. It was a nightmare. And now, with the help of AI, these breaches are becoming more and more common. Ever since that trip, I've been looking for something that can protect my computer and my data, something you can just set up and forget about. Well, our sponsor Aura can do just that. I don't know if you saw this, but AT&T revealed that over 73 million customer records, both existing and former customers, were released on the dark web. They recommended those affected use strong passwords, monitor account activity, and consider credit freezes or fraud alerts from credit bureaus. Well, Aura does all of this for me. And best of all, I don't have to download several different apps just because the company couldn't keep my data secure. If my information was compromised in the AT&T data breach, I wouldn't have to worry because Aura is always on, always doing the hard work of keeping me safe. I value my privacy and I value yours. Aura is nice enough to give all of my audience a free 2-week trial. Just go to aura.com/Montana Life Realty to start your 2-week free trial. It's also linked below in the description. Please help support our sponsor and our channel and give this a try. Now back to our video. The next thing we can talk about are covenants, and a lot of people don't want covenants, but what they don't think about is covenants aren't that bad. I mean, some of them do go overboard and some of them have, you know, I've seen them up to 200 pages full of rules of things you can and can't do. Well, clearly there's not a lot of people that are going to want that type of restriction on your lot, but standard covenants really aren't that bad. They keep the property values up because, you know, if you buy a nice piece of property and, you know, there's no covenants or no rules or no zoning on the property next door, the guy could park a bunch of junk cars out here like you can see here. And this happens, I see this around our valley a lot. And again, I get it's, you know, personal. You can do what you want. Everybody has the freedom to do what they want. But if you are spending a lot of money on this lot and building a nice house and doing whatever you're doing on there, clearly if you get all these cars parked next to you, it's going to drop the property value on your lot when you go to sell it someday. So keep that in mind when you're anti-covenant. They're not all that bad, and some of the rules are pretty good. Some of the things you should check on the covenants is if you want to build a shop, there are some subdivisions that don't allow shops. A lot of covenants won't allow commercial activity. And again, that's a good thing if, you know, you're living next door and a guy, you know, starts some sort of business and now you got traffic going by your place all day long because of this business that's being run next door. So obviously if you want your own business, that's great. But if you're just buying some property to do your own thing and you don't want a bunch of traffic, then the commercial restriction is probably good for you. A lot of times these covenants will restrict or they'll call out the way homes have to look. Sometimes they'll talk about the size of the homes you have to build on there. One of the big ones, and I get this question all the time, is they usually have rules where if you buy the lot and you start building your house, it has to be finished within, you know, 12 months, whatever it is, because you don't want somebody to, you know, take 5 years to build a house and park a camper out there next to the house they're building. But again, if that's something you want to do and you don't have the money to build the house all at the same time, or, you know, in one shot, then maybe that's something you should look for. But a lot of covenants do have the rule in there as far as how soon or how quickly the house has to be completed once it's started. We talked about shops. A lot of them will restrict, or some will allow guest houses, and that's something that you may or may not want. And the whole short-term rental thing, that's become a big deal lately as well. It sounds like a great thing to do, to have the ability to do, but if you're living in a neighborhood or a subdivision and the next door neighbor is renting out his property every time, so every weekend you have a giant party going on next door, that's something you need to think about if that's what you want or if that's what you're okay with. And then fencing. Fencing's also a big thing. Some subdivisions will require certain types of fences, or they'll outlaw certain types of fences. Again, something you should check into. And with these covenants, they're not going to be just sprung upon you when you go to the title company to close on your property. Hopefully you looked at them long before this point, but you have to sign a document that says you agree to follow the rules of all these covenants. So it's not going to be some secret thing that you didn't know about before you bought the property. Hopefully your agent, obviously if it's me, I'm going to show you this and we'll go over this long before the closing table. But hopefully your agent will talk about these and get you a copy of the covenants so you can check them over and see what you're up against before you buy this piece of property. Obviously, if you're in a subdivision that's right in town or next to a town, you're going to be governed by the zoning and the rules of that particular town. So there's going to be a whole set of things that you can and can't do with those types of properties. Where it gets interesting, and this is kind of the point of this whole video, is once you get outside of town and into the county, there is a lot of areas in this valley, like you can see down by Lakeside, where there's no zoning. And what does that mean? Well, kind of like I told you, there's basically no rules. If you want to build a house, I called the county building department. If you want to build a house out there, the only thing you have to do is get a permit from the state, and that permit requires you to have a plumbing and electrical inspection done. Nothing else. That's one, again, lack of laws here in Montana. That's one thing you really need to look at if you're buying a house in one of those areas. And who knows who built it and how good of a job they did. All that was inspected was the plumbing and electrical. The framing, everything else could be a disaster, but it is what it is here in Montana. And when you're out in the county where there's no zoning, you kind of run into that once in a while, and you have to be aware of what you're getting into. The other interesting thing in the county with no zoning is that many times in these subdivisions, you'll have setback rules where you'll have to stay 15 feet, 20 feet, whatever it is, away from the property line with whatever you're building. Well, out in the county with no zoning, if you look over here, here's the property line, and if we're standing right on the line, that means your neighbor could build his house within an inch of your property. So, again, I know everybody wants freedom and wants to be able to do what they want, but what you have to keep in mind is that if you don't have any rules, neither does your neighbor. So always be aware of what you could get into with the situation here with no zoning, no covenants, no rules. It's not all that it's cracked up to be. And that brings us to what I was saying earlier. Down in the Lakeside area, I showed you the map, there's just a lot of land that has no restrictions, no covenants, no zoning. Apparently the people down there, that's what they wanted, and everybody thought it was a great idea. But then here we are a couple years ago, these people bought this 10-acre piece of property here right off the highway, and they decided to build this alpine coaster, which you can argue one way or the other. We're a tourism area, and it's obviously a fun thing for a lot of people to use, and tourists to use, and even locals to use and go there. But the people that lived around it and the people in Lakeside they were not happy when this was built, and they tried everything they could do to get it stopped, and they were saying that there were going to be accidents on the highway. That was the angle they were using. But the problem is, again, there was no zoning, no restrictions, so they were kind of handcuffed as to what they can and can't do as far as, someone building that on their property. The other thing that's happening and hasn't happened yet, but now there's this giant golf resort that's been proposed, and it seems like it's going to be built. I mean, I'm sure something could come up, but they're building this huge resort, this huge high-end gated golf resort up above Lakeside, south of Lakeside. But again, there's no restrictions down there. I mean, obviously for something like that, they're going to have to go through the county and get some approvals. But because there's no zoning and no restrictions, I'm not sure the county can do much to stop it. We'll see. I'll keep you updated on it. But again, this all comes down to property rights and how many rights you have or how many rights you give up by getting involved with covenants or zoning where you buy. And it's just something to always keep in mind that some rules aren't that bad. The dilemma here in Montana is the amount of laws and the amount of rules. And like I said at the beginning, nobody wants a bunch of rules, but that also applies to your neighbor and can cause some big issues if there aren't any rules. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope when you're looking for property, you keep all these things in mind.
Thank you for watching our video. Please call, text, or email for more information, and don't forget to watch our other videos about Montana.